Hi guys, number one Marmaduke fan here, and I'm looking at Bizenghast #1. This is some good old 2004 Tokyo Pop faux manga. I call it Amera manga by Marty Alice LeGros. And I think this won a contest, Tokyo Pop's Rising Stars of Manga. So it's read left to right, and I'm pretty sure this is of English or American origin. This is kind of like a time capsule back into a weird time when manga was just first starting to become like a pop culture thing with teenage youth in the early 2000s. I'm an art tutor, so when I see something I don't like, I tend to try to see the positive in it and try to find maybe like what's worthwhile or what you can build that towards. So Bison Gas is an example of something where I don't dig it, but there are actually some really interesting examples of sort of gothic, detailed, creepy horror vibe that's not just about like scaring you with blood and guts, but just genuinely being chilling and unsettling without a lot of over the top violence. Rated teen, ages 13 up. Yeah, that's a perfectly fair rating, and it's very chilling. So I think the main let's see here, created by LeGros. Did he do the art? Yeah, I think so. Layout and lettering, Rob Steen. I don't know if layout that just mean like graphic design and lettering stuff. Anyway, so weird thing number one about it is time period. So the opening letter mentions the crash of a Honda Civic that leaves Dinah orphaned, but everything has a Victorian England, like 1800s era aesthetic to it. So is this the 1900s or the 1800s? They kind of explain that her aunt moved her to her family's old property in like an obscure Massachusetts town. So maybe there's a little neo-goth, like American Gothic style there, but there's a really weird sense of place to it. Now part of it is Dinah is being portrayed as mentally unstable, needing to be institutionalized, maybe because of the trauma of her parents' death in a car accident. So maybe there's an element of that where it's not necessarily supposed to make sense, but you're kind of left wondering, am I in the 1800s? Am I in the 1970s? When am I? And I think these two pages kind of illustrate what I said earlier. So this obviously is using a lot of reference, a lot of ornate details from kind of Victoria. What would it be? Art Nouveau or Art Deco? It'd be Art Nouveau. Prior to Art Deco, Art Nouveau was all about like lyrical details and ornation, all that kind of great stuff. And then the rest of it is sort of a imitation of the manga style, which I think unfortunately it's imitating manga without drawing naturally in a manga style. So sometimes the faces will be a little weird. There's some really good like establishing shots with just little details and things like that. But I'll skip ahead to show you. So like surprised expression, scared expression, but they don't really have much subtle emotional range. I actually like the cover better because it's sort of a creepy Russian doll, and for a scary Victorian story, maybe like having the characters look like creepy dolls would be a good fit for that. But this just reads like I want this to look like manga, but it's not quite there. There's some really genuinely like frightening things that are subtly frightening. So like there's this spider thing, right, with a jester on top, and you actually like between its legs where the genitals would be is like a giant spider mouth, and they actually make a point of showing that at some point. Oh, and then you never see it like rip off anyone's head or anything, but you just know that that's a possibility. Here's a better example. So this is clearly using maybe some like Lewis Carroll, Alice in Wonderland inspiration, and this is just such a lovely little drawing, and subtle too. Like it's a subtle, pretty face. It's not trying to ape the manga look, so it just looks gorgeous. I kind of wish if the entire book was drawn in this style. I think I could hardly recommend it to anyone. As it is, I'm just gonna say if the art kind of like turns you off, you're probably not gonna get into it. If you can kind of look past the art and you like good old like creepy gothic, mysterious ghost stories, I think you'll really like it. So that being said, I love fairy tales. I love when they're kind of weird and unusual things. There are some just like weird moments where I feel like this is an early work for Micah as a writer, where he's still trying to figure out like the beats and the rhythms of these stories. So the jester reveals like this creepy head within a head, Dinah will die. And then she just says, Vincent, can't we? No, let's just get this over with. What? Aren't we going to see her like reacting to the monster? We just cut to them like taking a casual stroll away from the monster. So I think some of this comes from like just experience. Like once you get more experience and a bit more feel for the rhythm, you'd know like you'd want to show the monster, and then you want to show the girl reacting to the monster, and then you'd want to show like the guy comforting the girl after being freaked out by the monster. That way we kind of like go 1, 2, 3, we put it all together. Here's another one of these lovely kind of maybe like taking inspiration from statuary and funeral monuments for a style. I love this one. So I love fairy tales. So what they do is Dinah is insane. She seems to be seeing spirits that aren't there. And Vincent is just a cool guy in the Massachusetts town who's trying to help her out. They go exploring around, they find this ancient mausoleum, and Dinah accidentally like signs a contract just by like being curious and pressing a button. She signs a contract to that unless she can free all these spirits, her life will be forfeit. And Vincent's such a cool guy that he's helping her out even though he doesn't really have to. This is purely on Dinah. And for the first few chapters, you know, they go find some spirits, they figure out their problem, the spirits turn into scary monsters, they solve their problem, and they free the spirits. And Dinah's kind of useless. She's frightened, she doesn't know what to do, she's clearly terrified by this, and Vincent is very caring and concerned for her. And for the first chunk of it, I was saying, okay, what's Dinah going to do? Is this Vincent's story or is this Dinah's story? And it all built up to a nice moment later on where Dinah actually had to make a decision. Here's like another weird moment where there's this creepy like water fairy that like lures little children into the river by being nice and friendly to the little children, and then the water fairy will drown them. And so Vincent and Dinah figure out that they can't see the fairy because they're too old. They're teenagers. The fairy only appears to like very small children. So Dinah just goes and yells at the portal for help from Bali Lala, the spider, or whatever. And then it shows a few establishing shots. They walk away, and they're a little kid. And she says, "What? What the? Dinah, you did it. We're children." What? What did Dinah do? She yelled for help. There was no explanation of what. Now, for a fairy tale, you don't need an explanation. Mysterious things can happen. It just, what makes this odd is that Vincent thinks Dinah did something, when clearly there's just something about the magic of the realm that's doing this to them. Or if Dinah was supposed to do something, you'd think there'd be some storytelling beat where it was like, oh, asking for help is all we needed to do to activate the magic, or something like that. Like there'd be some sort of concrete explanation of what Dinah did to explain the transition, or you just make it an unexplainable transition and you just keep moving, kind of like an old school fairy tale. But I loved like this fairy. There's some really, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, there's some really unsettling stuff where she's about to kill one of the kids by strangulation, and Dinah and Vincent arrive just in time to save the kids. There's kind of this weird thing where I don't really know who's real and who's a ghost, because it looks like they save her, but then she like gives Vincent a kiss and she flies up like an angel, like she was dead the entire time. What? Is everyone in the spirit world kind of already dead and needs to like pass on to the next life, or is it only the monsters? I'm not quite sure. And then there's, towards the end, like this really funny little dude shows up. Where'd he go? There he is. So he's just like this goofy little cat thing that, you know, does pop culture references and is kind of irreverent and explains to them what they have to do to remove Dinah's curse. Because Bali Lama kind of put the curse on them, but he or she or it didn't feel like having to explain it. And this guy's kind of a teacher or a guide who will actually kind of explain to them the rules of the dangerous game they're playing. They also do a thing where I kind of like it, where they skip some of the fluff. Like every night they go home, they come back the next day to complete the next task. So they'll just like drop them right in the middle of the task, and you won't see them like waking up and then walking over to the mausoleum and then starting the next task. They'll just hop them in there. I think maybe just a little dialogue to help guide the reader. So I'm actually praising it. It's truncating some of the pacing of this, but I think that generally the problem with this is conveying some of what's going on to the reader, so the reader doesn't have to go back, read it a second time to figure out, oh, that's what's going on. I did that a couple times, and like on the second reading, I was able to get some of the things I missed. There's just going to be like a few plot points that feel like they got brushed over. Those are what happened to other trespassers. So the really genuine moment, I think, is that this little guy, Daniel, explains that only Dinah has signed the contract and Vincent doesn't have to be here. And if they want, they could just put the burden of the contract on Vincent, and Dinah will be free. Now, Vincent has been doing the lion's share of the work for most of this. He's been kind of the most active party throughout, and Dinah's clearly been needing his help. So he says, well, I'm better off on my own. Let me take the curse, Dinah. And she refuses to let him do that because she says, well, it's essentially it's my cross to bear. I can't let you do that for me. So what that means is that she is, even though she hasn't been that active so far in like fighting all the spirits and fixing their problems, she is taking responsibility for kind of like her, you know, mildly dumb decision to sign the contract in the creepy old mausoleum, and she knows it's her life on the line. She can't accept Vincent going that far for her. She is willing to accept his help, and she's genuinely appreciative of his help. She'll thank him. She'll just show that she really appreciates him. It's really simple. Like, it's a weird story, but I do like just seeing some like simple little acts of kindness and simple little acts of humanity in spite of some of the weirdness overall. So it leaves off with them like just starting like the last leg of their journey. I think they freed some spirits, and now they've got to like free the 10 super spirit. That's the thing, is I don't quite know what the deal is with a lot of the spirits, even though Daniel did some kind of like fun exposition and made it funny. I like the fan art, so I'm guessing this had a life as a webcomic or something. Art by Ixis, art by Jennifer Dedger, art by Connor Carrot. I love seeing fan art of characters in a variety of styles because it just gives, I don't know, it just like gives you some insight into things almost. Art by Katarina, 2004. That's a very lovely style, very genuine manga style. Art by Katrina Bender. And you see how people like get invested romantically in this? Like a girl is trapped, her soul is at risk, and a young boy will help her free her soul and fulfill the contract. It's just so straightforward, simple, romantic, creepy storytelling. This is by Bewilde, 2004. QueenieChan.com. I really like this one. Very like thick outlines along the outside, and then thinner lines on the interior. I don't know. I've seen things. Oh, you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me a little bit of George Alexopoulos, the creator of Problematic, where it's not quite the manga style, but it's maybe a mashup of manga and other elements. Art by Bettina. Dinah by Steve Emund. I really like this dynamic pose and the little details of the hair. Art by Bara. And I love how everyone kind of clicked with like the creepy gothic vibe of it all. So, oh, and the staff of Tokyo Pop did some like cute like editor's picks. I think Tokyo Pop went bankrupt or something, but this was a really fun and very, very weird part of manga history where American comic companies were trying to get into like the manga craze as it was just starting to explode. I don't know if I would strongly recommend Bizenghast. I just couldn't get past like the faux manga eyes, but I love the detailed ornamental style in the front. What are they called? Frontispieces and the cover itself. I wish that the whole book was in that style, and I think it'd be a masterpiece. But and I love the creepy gothic storytelling of it. So I will keep reading it. I'll see if I just get too weirded out and dip out. But I do like unique things, even if I don't like every aspect of that thing. And I'm kind of glad that the fad of Amera manga or faux manga was a fad, and that we kind of like moved on. You don't have to hold yourself rigorously to the manga style. Micah, it's M. Alice Legros. That's weird. It's M. Alice Legros on the front and Marty Legros on the back. But Legros really does have a very, very intriguing, interest in gothic details and architecture that makes for a unique, creepy vibe. So definitely worth looking at for good old genuine creepy ghost stories. That's it. I'm no more Marmaduke fan. Love you guys. Like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell to receive notifications. Check out my Subscribe Star, the better alternative to Patreon, and I'll catch you later.